The house stood at the edge of town, away from the busy streets and glowing shops. It was old. The paint was faded and the windows looked like tired eyes staring out into the world. Most people passed by quickly, pretending not to see it, because the house carried whispers with it, whispers of things people could not explain. When Daniel first saw it, he thought it was perfect for him. He had been looking for a cheap place, somewhere he could finally call his own. The price was strangely low, almost like the sellers wanted to get rid of it quickly. He laughed when the agent warned him that the house had a history. To him, it was just another story to scare buyers. But from the very first night, Daniel felt the difference. The air inside the house was colder than outside, even when the heater was running. The floorboards creaked as if someone else was walking behind him. At first, he told himself it was just the house settling, old wood making old sounds, but then he heard something else, something that made his heart stop. It was a voice, soft and broken, calling his name, not loudly, not in anger, but in a whisper that seemed to come from the floor itself. He froze in his bed, listening, his ears straining in the silence of the night. He wanted to believe it was a dream. Yet when he sat up, the whisper came again, clearer, more desperate. Daniel. He jumped, his skin covered in goosebumps. His eyes moved to the corner of the room where a trapdoor led down into the basement. He had noticed it when he first moved in, but he never bothered to open it. The lock on it was old, heavy, and covered in rust now in the middle of the night. The metal seemed to rattle as if something below wanted out. Daniel told himself not to be foolish. He walked back to bed, pulled the blanket over his head, and tried to sleep, but sleep did not come. The sound of chains dragging on stone echoed faintly from below, like a prisoner shifting in the dark. The next morning, Daniel tried to shake off the memory. He made coffee, turned on the radio, and tried to live like nothing strange had happened. But his mind kept drifting back to that basement door. Why was it locked from the outside? Who put those chains there? He asked a neighbor, an old man who had lived nearby for years. The man stared at him with wide eyes when he mentioned the house. "You bought that place?" The old man muttered, shaking his head. "People don't stay there long, boy. The last owner, he died in that house. They say he was hiding something in the basement, something not human." Daniel laughed nervously, but the old man's serious face sent a chill down his spine. He walked back home quickly, trying not to look over his shoulder. He wanted to believe it was just a story, but deep inside, fear was already planting its roots. That night, the sounds returned. The whispers, the dragging chains, the faint cry of someone in pain. Daniel sat at the edge of his bed, gripping a flashlight in one hand and a kitchen knife in the other. He told himself he would not go down there, but the sounds grew louder, almost begging him to come. At last, he stood. His legs shook as he walked to the basement door. The rusted lock glared at him like a warning. He touched it, and the cold metal stung his fingers. From below, a whisper floated up, soft but clear. "Help me." Daniel's breath caught in his throat. That was no dream, no trick of the wind. Someone or something was down there. He stepped back, fear warring with curiosity. His heart pounded so hard he could hear it in his ears. He could walk away, lock the door tighter, and never look back, but another part of him, the part that could not ignore a cry for help, told him that he had to open it. As the clock struck midnight, the house groaned as if it too waited for his choice. Daniel held the flashlight tighter, staring at the chains. And for the first time in his life, he wished he had never bought the house, but deep inside, he already knew. Whatever secret this house held, it was now his. And the strange whisper calling his name would not stop until he faced it. Daniel could not get the basement door out of his mind all day long. Even when he tried to distract himself with unpacking boxes or setting up furniture, his eyes kept sliding toward the corner where the locked trapdoor sat. It felt alive, as if the wood itself was breathing with a hidden pulse. He told himself he was being foolish, but deep down, he knew something was waiting down there. By nightfall, the house grew colder. The lights flickered now and then, casting long shadows that seemed to move on their own. Daniel sat at the kitchen table with a flashlight close by. His ears were sharp, listening for every creak, every faint sound from below. And then he heard it again, the voice, Daniel. This time it was louder. Trembling with pain and need, he dropped his mug, coffee spilling across the table. His heart thumped so hard he could barely breathe. He turned toward the basement door, and in the silence that followed, he heard something else, the clink of chains, the scrape of metal on stone. He grabbed the flashlight and stepped closer. His hand shook as he touched the rusty lock. The metal was cold and rough beneath his skin. For a long time he simply stared at it, torn between fear and curiosity. Every part of him screamed to stay away. But then came another sound, a cry faint and broken. The sound of someone who had been alone too long. Please, help. Daniel froze, his mouth went dry. That was no ghost, it was a real voice. Desperate and pleading, he tried to force himself back. But his human heart was stronger than fear. What if someone was trapped down there? What if they had been locked away for years? He couldn't ignore it, he had to see. He ran to the garage and found an old hammer. Dust clung to it, but it was heavy and solid. He returned to the basement door, the flashlight beam trembling in his other hand. The lock stared at him like a guardian daring him to break it. He raised the hammer high and brought it down with a loud clang. The noise echoed through the house like thunder. Daniel's ears rang, his pulse quickened. But he didn't stop. Blow after blow, he struck the chain. The air grew colder with every strike, as if the house itself disapproved at last with one final hit. The lock shattered and the chain slid away with a heavy rattle. The basement door creaked open. A wave of damp air rushed out, carrying with it the smell of stone and dust and something else. Something faintly sweet, almost metallic. He swallowed hard and pointed the flashlight into the darkness. The beam lit stone steps leading down. Narrow and old, the walls were rough, carved long ago. The air felt thick, pressing against his chest as if warning him not to continue. But then he saw movement at the bottom of the stairs. A shape small at first curled into the shadows. He lifted the light higher, and the figure slowly raised its head. The glow of silver eyes flashed back at him. Not human eyes, but wide, luminous, filled with exhaustion and sadness. Daniel stumbled back, his hand tightening on the hammer. His mind screamed to run, yet his feet refused to move. The figure stepped forward into the light, chains dragging from its wrists and ankles. And then he saw her, a woman, no, not exactly. Her body was shaped like a woman's, delicate and graceful, but her skin shimmered with faint markings, glowing softly like starlight under her pale surface. Her hair fell around her shoulders in silver strands that caught the flashlight's beam. She looked fragile, yet her presence filled the room with strange power. Her lips parted and her voice trembled. "You came." Daniel's breath caught. He expected fear, but what he felt instead was confusion. The alien woman took another step, her chains scraping against the stone. She lifted her wrists, showing the rusted cuffs that dug into her skin. Her glowing eyes locked onto his. "I am yours now," she whispered, "your wife." The words cut into him like a blade. He blinked, not sure if he had heard right. "What?" he stammered. "What are you talking about?" But she only nodded slowly, her silver eyes never leaving his face. "You own this house, you own me," she said. "I was bound to it, bound to him until you came." Daniel's heart raced. His mind spun with 100 questions. He shook his head, unable to believe it. "No, that's impossible," he whispered. You're not real, this can't be real." But the chains were real. The scars on her wrists were real. And her voice, filled with both sorrow and hope, was real too. Daniel stumbled back up a step, his flashlight shaking in his grip. His world had just shattered. This was no simple house, no cheap bargain. He had stepped into something far greater, far darker, and far stranger than he could have ever imagined. And now the secret of the basement stood before him, alive, chained and calling herself his wife. Daniel's flashlight trembled as the beam landed fully on her face. For a long moment he simply stood frozen at the top of the stairs, staring into those silver eyes that glowed faintly in the dark. They didn't look like the cold, empty eyes of a monster. They looked tired, full of pain. Yet strangely soft, she stood there, half hidden by the shadows, her thin body wrapped in chains that dragged against the stone floor. The glow of her skin markings flickered with her slow breathing, pulsing gently like light trapped under water. Daniel couldn't look away. She looked human enough to make his chest ache, but too alien to let him believe his own eyes. The silence stretched until it felt like the whole house was holding its breath. Then, in a soft voice that shook with something between fear and hope, she whispered, "You came for me. You opened the door." Daniel gripped the hammer tighter. His voice came out shaky. "Who? What are you?" The woman tilted her head, her silver hair falling across her face. "I am yours," she said quietly. "Your wife." The words hit him like thunder. His stomach dropped. He stumbled back a step, shaking his head. "That's impossible. I don't even know you." Her chains clinked as she raised her hand slowly. showing the scars around her wrists where the metal had eaten into her pale skin. "You own the house," she said, "and with the house, you own me." Daniel felt cold all over. His breath came fast. He wanted to laugh it off, call it nonsense. But her voice wasn't joking. Every word carried a heavy truth. A truth she seemed to have carried for years. "I don't own people," he snapped. "That's not how this works." Her eyes flickered. And for the first time he saw something else in them. Sadness, deep and endless. "You are different," she whispered. "I can feel it." "You don't want me as a slave." Daniel swallowed hard. His throat felt dry. He wanted to ask 100 questions, but none came out. Instead, his flashlight beam drifted lower, showing more of her figure. The thin fabric of her old, torn dress hung from her shoulders, stained with dust. Her bare feet were cut and bruised, as if she had walked across stone for years without shoes. "Who put you here?" Daniel asked finally, his voice cracked as he spoke. She lowered her head, silver strands of hair hiding her face. "The one before you," she said softly. "He bought me, kept me here, locked me in the dark. I was his. Until the house changed hands, now I belong to you." Daniel's heart pounded. He remembered the old man's warning. The whispers about the last owner. Could it be true? Was this woman chained down here for years while no one knew? He felt sick. "I'm not like him," Daniel said firmly. "You don't belong to me. You're free now." Her head lifted slowly, her silver eyes catching his, shining brighter for just a moment, almost as if his words had sparked something inside her, something she had forgotten. But then she shook her head, the chains clattering. "You don't understand. I can't leave. The binding is written. It ties me to the walls, to the stone, to the very air of this place, without the master of the house. I am nothing." Daniel stepped closer, ignoring the fear crawling up his spine. His flashlight beam shook across the old steps until he reached the bottom. Standing in front of her, he realized how fragile she looked. Her shoulders were thin, her skin pale, her lips trembling like someone who had gone hungry for far too long. And yet beneath all that weakness, she radiated something powerful, something not human. The markings on her skin pulsed brighter now that he was near, glowing faintly like stars coming alive at night. He could almost feel them hum in the air. "Tell me your name," Daniel said softly. His voice steadied as he looked at her. For a moment she said nothing, then she whispered, "Liara." The way she spoke, it carried music, like the word itself belonged to another world. Daniel repeated it under his breath. "Liara." It felt strange on his tongue, yet right. Her eyes softened, and a small spark of life entered her face. The kind of spark that comes when someone who has been forgotten for too long finally hears their name again. "You are the first to call me that in years," she said. "The others called me property." Daniel clenched his fists, anger burning in his chest. The idea that anyone could treat her like that made him sick. He had no idea what she truly was. But he knew one thing. No one deserved to be chained like an animal. As if reading his thoughts, Liara stepped closer. The chains dragging behind her, she lifted a hand, slow and careful. As though she expected him to pull away, her fingers hovered near his arm. But she didn't touch, she only whispered, "Why did you come down?" "Most turn away, most never listen." Daniel swallowed hard. "Because you asked for help," he said simply. For the first time she gave the smallest smile, faint and broken but real. It lit her face like the glow of her skin. And in that moment, Daniel felt something he hadn't expected. Trust. Fragile but growing between them still. Fear lurked in the corners of his mind. He didn't know what she truly was or what secrets the house still kept. But one thing was clear. Liara wasn't just a prisoner. She was part of something much bigger, something dangerous, and by opening that door, Daniel had stepped into it too. The shadows around them seemed to close in, the air heavy with silence somewhere above. The house creaked as if it was listening. Liara's silver eyes held his, and Daniel knew this was only the beginning. Daniel stood frozen in the basement, his flashlight trembling in his grip. Liara's silver eyes stayed locked on his face, shining with quiet desperation. Her chains rattled softly with each breath, the sound echoing like broken music against the stone walls. He wanted to believe she was only telling some strange story to survive, but deep inside he knew she was speaking the truth. "Listen to me," Daniel said, his voice tight. "You're not mine, you're not anyone's. I don't care what those chains or papers say, you're free." Liara tilted her head, her silver hair slipping over her shoulders. Her expression was almost gentle, almost sad. "No," she whispered, "you don't understand. You inherited me the moment you signed the deed. The contract does not care what you want. The house chose you, and through the house, so did I. Daniel blinked, his stomach twisted. A contract? He asked sharply. What are you talking about? This isn't some fairy tale. Her voice cut through him like a blade. Go to the attic, find the box with the seal. Read it with your own eyes, then you'll see I do not lie. Daniel wanted to argue, to scream, but her words carried weight. He could see it in the way her body sagged under the chains, the way her voice cracked with exhaustion. She had no reason to invent such madness. Something bigger was at play. He stepped back from her, heart pounding. Stay here, he muttered, as if she could go anywhere. The sound of her chains dragging across the floor followed him as he climbed the stairs. He felt her eyes burning into his back until the basement door shut above him. The attic was old, filled with dust and cobwebs. His flashlight swept over broken furniture, yellowed curtains and stacks of forgotten boxes. Finally, in the farthest corner, he saw it. An oak chest with a strange metal seal carved into the front. He crouched down, his hands shaking as he brushed away the dust. The seal was like nothing he had ever seen. Twisted lines forming symbols that almost moved when he stared too long. His fingers hesitated, but then he pulled the chest open. Inside lay stacks of old papers, brittle with age. His eyes scanned the faded ink and his heart sank. The documents weren't written in English, but somehow, as his eyes moved across the strange symbols, he understood, as if the words translated themselves in his mind. By purchase of this dwelling, ownership of the bound one transfers to the new master. Body and soul remain tied to the foundation of the home until release or death. Daniel's breath caught. He flipped through more pages, each one worse than the last. Contracts signed in blood, names of previous owners, records of binding rituals, and at the bottom, a parchment with a name scrawled in sharp. Alien Ink, Liara. He dropped the papers, his mind spun. His hands trembled so hard he could barely hold the flashlight. It was real. Everything she said was real. He had inherited more than a house. He had inherited a life, a woman chained by something he didn't understand. His chest burned with anger. This is insane, he whispered to himself. People don't own people, this ends now. He stormed back down to the basement. His fists clenched around the papers. Liara lifted her head as he returned. Her glowing eyes watching him closely, she didn't need to ask. She already knew what he had found, you see, she whispered, her voice carrying both sorrow and relief. The binding is older than you. Older than me, I cannot leave without you. I cannot breathe without this house, you are my master now. Whether you want it or not, Daniel threw the papers down, his voice cracking with fury. I'm not your master. I don't care about some cursed contract. You're a person, not a possession. No one owns you. Her eyes softened, a fragile hope flickering in their glow. But it faded quickly, she shook her head, chains clinking with the motion. You are kind, I can feel it. But kindness will not change what the hunters will do. Daniel froze. Hunters? Liara's expression turned dark, her voice lowered, trembling with fear. They are coming. They always come when the master changes, they will return for me. They will not stop until I am theirs again. The words hit him like ice water. He stared at her, his mind racing. Who are they? Liara shivered, her glowing skin dimming as if a shadow had passed over her. The ones who traded me, the ones who chained me. They walk as men, but are not men. They are stronger than you. They will smell my freedom, and they will come soon. Daniel felt his blood run cold. He thought buying this house was a fresh start, a quiet place away from the world. Instead, he had stepped into something dark and deadly. His life was no longer his own. Liara's voice broke the silence again. You can leave me here, lock the chains, pretend none of this exists, but they will come and they will not knock politely. Daniel clenched his jaw. Fear clawed at him, but anger burned hotter. He looked into her silver eyes, her scars, her trembling hands, and he knew. She wasn't lying. She wasn't trying to trick him, she was warning him. He tightened his grip on the hammer, his knuckles white. Then let them come, he whispered. If they want you, they'll have to go through me first. For the first time since he had met her, Liara's lips curved into a faint smile, fragile but real. The chains rattled as she straightened her back, her glowing markings pulsing brighter with new life. In that moment, Daniel realized something shocking. Not only had he inherited a haunted house and an alien wife bound by an ancient contract, he had also inherited a war he never asked for, and it was about to begin. The next few days passed like a blur. Daniel barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he imagined silver eyes glowing in the dark, or chains rattling just beyond the edge of hearing. But what haunted him more was Liara's warning. "They are coming." Her voice echoed in his mind like a bell that never stopped ringing. He tried to tell himself it was impossible. Maybe she was wrong. Maybe she was only afraid of shadows. But deep inside, Daniel knew she wasn't lying. The contract in the attic was real, the chains were real, and Liara's fear was too raw to be faked. On the third night it happened. Daniel was sitting in the living room with the hammer still on the table beside him. His flashlight lay across his lap. His body was tired, but his ears stayed sharp. Then he heard it, the low hum of engines outside, a sound that didn't belong to any car he had ever known. He rushed to the window, pulling the curtain just a little. His blood ran cold. Dark vehicles, sleek and strange, stood at the edge of the property. Their surfaces shimmered faintly, like shadows wrapped in metal. Shapes moved around them, tall, broad figures cloaked in black. Their eyes glowed faintly red in the night. Hunters. Daniel's chest tightened. His first thought was to run, to escape before they reached the house, but then he thought of Liara, chained in the basement, waiting, terrified. If he left her, she wouldn't stand a chance. And he couldn't do that. Not to her, not to anyone. He grabbed the hammer and ran to the basement. The door groaned as he pushed it open. Liara looked up immediately, her silver eyes wide. She had already felt them, even before he spoke. "They're here," Daniel whispered, his throat dry. Her chains rattled as she moved closer, fear shaking her voice. "You must hide. They will kill you if they find you here." Daniel shook his head firmly. His grip on the hammer tightened until his knuckles turned white. "I'm not leaving you," he said. "If they want you, they'll have to fight me first." Liara's eyes shimmered with something new, hope and sorrow tangled together. "You don't understand their strength," she whispered. "They are not like you. They are older. Faster, they can smell fear itself." Daniel's jaw set hard. "Then let them smell something else," he said. "Let them smell fight." He raced back upstairs, his mind spinning. He didn't have alien weapons, he didn't have armor, but he had human grit. He dragged furniture against the doors, locked the windows, and scattered makeshift traps through the hallways, nails on boards, broken glass beneath rugs, heavy objects tied with rope. He had seen war only on television, but desperation made him clever. Outside, the hum grew louder. The hunters were circling the house, their footsteps shook the ground, heavy and deliberate. Daniel crouched behind the doorway, hammer in one hand, flashlight in the other, his heart pounded. Sweat dripping down his forehead. The first crash came from the back door. Wood splintered as claws, no, not hands but claws, tore through the frame. A dark shape forced its way inside, towering, its cloak brushing the ceiling. Its glowing red eyes swept across the room. Daniel's breath caught. He had never seen anything like it. The hunter's skin was rough like stone, its face hidden beneath a mask carved with strange runes. It sniffed the air, a low growl rumbling from deep in its chest. "Where is she?" the creature hissed. Its voice was low, distorted, as if it was speaking through broken metal. Daniel stepped out, his legs shaking but his grip firm. "You're not taking her," he said. His voice cracked but carried enough anger to draw the hunter's gaze. The creature tilted its head, studying him. Then, with a sound that might have been a laugh, it took a slow step forward. "You are only human," it rasped. "Do not stand in the way of those who own the stars." Daniel's hammer shook in his hand, but he didn't move back. His eyes burned with stubborn fire. "Maybe I'm just human," he said. "But humans don't walk away when someone begs for help." The hunter lunged, its claws flashing in the dim light. Daniel swung the hammer with every ounce of strength he had. The metal head cracked against the creature's arm. The beast howled, stumbling back as black ichor sprayed across the floor. For one shocking moment, Daniel realized something. The hunter could bleed. It wasn't invincible. Adrenaline surged through him. He pressed forward, swinging again, forcing the creature back into the hallway. But more shadows moved outside the windows, more hunters waiting their turn. From the basement, Liara's cry echoed through the house, her voice trembling with both fear and something else. Faith. Daniel! He gritted his teeth, sweat stinging his eyes. He had no idea how long he could last, but one thing was clear. The hunters had come for Liara, and they would not leave without her, unless he stopped them, as the front door shattered and more figures poured inside. Daniel raised his hammer, his chest burning with fear and fury. The house that once felt like a curse was now a battlefield. And for the first time in his life, Daniel understood. This fight was bigger than him, bigger than his house. It was about proving something, that even against the darkness a human heart could stand tall. And as the hunters closed in, Daniel whispered under his breath, "You'll regret coming here." The walls of the house shook with every impact. Daniel's chest burned as he swung the hammer again and again. Each blow was wild, desperate but fueled by something stronger than fear. One hunter had already collapsed, its black blood pooling across the wooden floor. But more shadows pressed against the windows, their claws scratching like nails on glass. Daniel's arms ached. His breath came in ragged gasps. His human body was reaching its limit. He wasn't trained for this, wasn't built for this, yet the thought of leaving Liara chained in the basement pushed him forward. He had no choice but to fight. From below, Liara's voice rang out, shaking with both fear and strength. "Daniel, stop, they will not end, you cannot fight them all." Her words cut through him. He stumbled back into the hallway, his hammer slipping from his sweaty hand. The hunters outside began to circle slower, like predators who had found amusement in watching their prey tire out. Daniel slammed his back against the wall, gasping for air. His eyes darted to the basement door. He could almost see Liara's silver eyes watching through the cracks. Chained, helpless, yet burning with something he didn't understand. He dragged himself toward the door, forcing it open. He stumbled down the stairs, nearly falling onto the cold stone floor. Liara rushed forward as far as the chains allowed, her glowing skin flickering in the dim light. "You'll die if you stay up there," she whispered urgently. "They will tear you apart. You must let me go." Daniel dropped to his knees, his body trembling with exhaustion. He stared at her wrists, bruised and torn from the heavy cuffs. "If I free you," he said, his voice hoarse, "what happens then?" Her glowing eyes softened, her lips trembling as she spoke. "Then I fight. I was not born to be a prisoner. I was a warrior before they stole me. Before the chains, before the house, I had strength." Daniel blinked, his chest heaving. He wanted to believe her, but doubt gnawed at him. "Why didn't you tell me?" She lowered her head, shame flickering across her face. "Because the last master feared me. He kept me chained, locked in silence. He used the contract not to keep me safe, but to keep me powerless. I did not want you to see me as a weapon. I wanted you to see me as more." Her voice cracked on the last word. Daniel's heart ached at the sound. He reached out, his hand brushing against the cold iron cuff on her wrist. The metal was rough, sharp against his skin. Above them, the walls shook again. Dust rained down from the ceiling as another door broke upstairs. The hunters were inside, moving carefully now, hunting him. He had minutes, maybe less. Liara leaned closer, her chains clattering. "You must choose, Daniel," she whispered. "Keep me bound and die as a human trying to fight gods, or free me and let me fight beside you." Daniel's throat tightened. He thought of everything he knew, his small, ordinary life before this, his quiet days of working, saving, dreaming of a simple home. All of it was gone now, replaced with blood, fear, and a woman who should not exist. Yet when he looked at her, he didn't see a monster. He saw someone broken, someone stolen, someone who had been waiting for someone like him. The sound of claws scraping the stairs made the choice clear. Daniel grabbed the hammer again, lifting it high. He slammed it against the chain binding her to the wall. The first strike rang out like a gunshot. Liara gasped, her glowing markings flaring brighter. The hunters roared from above as if they could feel what was happening. Daniel swung again, sparks flying as the chain cracked. One more blow and it snapped apart. Clattering to the floor, Liara staggered forward, her body trembling as energy rippled through her veins. Her eyes locked onto his, blazing brighter now. "The others," she whispered. "Break them too." Daniel smashed the cuffs at her ankles, the shackles at her wrists. Every strike sent a shock of light pulsing through her body. Her chains fell one by one until at last, she stood unbound for the first time in years. The moment the last chain fell, the air shifted. The room vibrated with a low hum. Liara straightened her back, taller, stronger. Her glowing skin markings burned brighter, curling like living fire across her arms. Her silver eyes gleamed like molten metal. The house groaned as if alive. Reacting to her freedom above, the hunters howled, claws tearing through walls. But Liara no longer trembled. She stepped past Daniel, her bare feet pressing firmly against the stone, her shoulders squared with unshakable purpose. "They will regret this night," she said softly, her voice no longer broken. But sharp like a blade, Daniel pushed himself up, sweat dripping from his face. He could barely believe the transformation before him. The fragile prisoner was gone. In her place stood a warrior, fierce and radiant. The basement shook as the first hunter crashed down the stairs, its red eyes glowing in the dark. Liara raised her chained wrists, now broken but still sharp like weapons. Light surged from her skin, and with a scream that echoed through the walls, she leapt forward. Daniel shielded his eyes as the room exploded with silver light. The sound of chains whipping through the air and claws screeching against stone filled the basement. He stumbled back, but a strange calm settled in his chest. For the first time, he wasn't fighting alone. Liara had chosen freedom and Daniel had chosen her. The basement was no longer a prison. It had become a battlefield. Silver light clashed with red as Liara tore into the first hunter. Her broken chains now weapons in her hands, she swung them with deadly grace, sparks flashing as metal struck alien armor. The hunter roared, its claws lashing, but Liara moved faster, her glowing skin burning bright. Daniel stood at the bottom of the stairs. Frozen in awe, he had seen her as a prisoner, fragile and broken. Now he saw her as something else entirely. A warrior. Fierce and unstoppable, she was not lying when she said she had once fought. The hunters had stolen her strength, but now it had returned. The first hunter fell with a scream, black blood splattering across the stone floor. Liara turned, her silver eyes blazing. Another figure lunged down the stairs, but she met it head on, her chains wrapped around its neck. Snapping tight with a fierce twist, she dragged it to the ground and crushed it beneath her foot. Daniel's chest pounded, adrenaline surging through him. He wanted to help, but his hammer felt small compared to her light. Still, he would not stand idle. He picked up his weapon, ready to strike if anything reached her side. More hunters crashed into the house above. Their claws tore through the walls. Their growls shook the air. Dust rained down from the ceiling as the house groaned under the assault. Daniel's fear whispered that this was hopeless. But then he remembered something. Humans were not known for giving up. Liara fought like fire itself, but even she staggered when two hunters came at once. Daniel leapt forward, his hammer smashing into the leg of one. The creature howled, stumbling, giving Liara the opening she needed. Her chain whipped forward, slicing across its throat. It fell, and she gave him a quick, sharp nod. "You fight with no fear," she said between heavy breaths. Daniel panted, sweat dripping down his face. "That's humanity for you," he replied. Trying to smile even in the chaos, the hunters regrouped, their red eyes glowing like coals in the dark. They hissed in their strange tongue, circling, waiting for the moment to strike again. Liara's markings pulsed brighter, but Daniel could see her body trembling from exhaustion. She had been chained for too long. Starved of strength, she couldn't hold this forever. One of the hunters stepped forward. Taller than the rest, its armor was black as night, its mask carved with cruel symbols. It raised a clawed hand and spoke in a voice that rattled the walls. "She belongs to us. She is bound. She cannot be freed by human hands." Daniel stepped in front of Liara without thinking. His hammer lifted, though his arms shook with fatigue. "Then maybe you don't understand humans," he shouted back. His voice cracked, but it carried. "We don't care about your contracts or your chains. She's not your property. She's free." The hunter tilted its head, almost amused. "You are nothing human. Fragile bones wrapped in weak flesh. Why fight for something that is not yours?" Daniel's chest rose and fell as he stared into its burning eyes. "Because she asked for help," he said simply. His voice steadied, filled with something unbreakable. And when someone asks a human for help, we don't turn away. Not ever, the hunter roared, lunging forward. But Liara's silver light exploded in that moment. Brighter than ever before. The markings across her body blazed like fire. Her chains glowed white-hot in her hands. She slammed into the leader with a scream that shook the air. The basement erupted in chaos. Liara and the hunter clashed with such force the walls cracked. Daniel was thrown back, his flashlight shattering on the ground. Darkness and light swirled together then with one final strike. Liara drove her chains through the hunter's chest. Silver light burst outward, consuming its body in flames of energy. The others shrieked, stumbling back. Their red eyes flickered with fear for the first time. Daniel pulled himself to his feet, staring in shock as the remaining hunters began to retreat. They backed away, hissing, their claws scraping the walls as they fled into the night. Outside, the hum of their dark vehicles roared, and in moments the property was silent again. The smell of ash lingered in the air. Dust floated down around them. Liara collapsed to her knees. Her glowing light dimming, Daniel rushed to her side, catching her before she hit the floor. Her silver eyes blinked open weakly. "They will return," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "The binding is broken. They will not forgive this." Daniel shook his head, holding her close. "Then let them come again. We'll fight them together." She looked at him, her lips trembling. "Why?" she asked softly. "Why risk everything for me?" Daniel met her gaze, his own eyes burning with stubborn fire. "Because that's what it means to be human," he said. "We fight for those who can't fight for themselves. And no contract, no chain, no hunter will ever change that." For a long moment, silence filled the ruined basement. Then Liara gave him a faint smile, fragile but real. Her silver eyes softened, glowing faintly even as her body trembled. "You are different," she whispered. "Perhaps humanity is different." Daniel helped her to her feet. His arms ached, his lungs burned, but his spirit stood taller than ever before. Together they climbed the basement stairs, stepping into the broken house. The walls were shattered, the windows cracked. But the night outside was strangely quiet. For the first time, Daniel realized this fight wasn't just about one house or one woman. It was about something far bigger, about showing a galaxy that humanity's answer to chains and fear was not surrender, but defiance. And as Liara leaned against him, her silver light glowing faintly in the dark, Daniel whispered to himself, "They thought they owned her. They thought they could own us, but they just learned what humans are made of." Humanity's answer had been given, and it would echo far beyond the walls of that old house.